Hello, this is Tasha from Sensi, and I'm going to read to you part 5, the final part of the Aardvark who wasn't sure. So let's return to Mrs. Aardvark and Pim. Next evening, Mrs. Aardvark gave Pim a fighting lesson outside the burrow. Mind you, I don't think I really need to tell you what to do, Pim's mother said as they went up the tunnel. Instinct will tell you. Whose instinct? Pim said. What's instinct? Mrs. Aardvark said. Well, let me explain. It's the voice inside you that tells you important things that you need to know. So, for instance, remember when the lion came sniffing about and you were trapped under the ground? You couldn't see it, but I expect that you could smell it. Well, how did you know that it was a big cat? I just knew, Pim said. Yes, well, that was instinct working, said Mrs. Aardvark. Now, let's see if it will work for you again. I'm going to be a cheetah. No, a lion, said Pim. All right, okay, I'll be a lion. Now, you stand over there, under that tree, and then I'll pounce on you. But I'll do it suddenly. And I have a feeling that you'll know what to do. Will you roar? Pim said. He thought that this was actually a great game. No, I can't, said his mother. You will just have to imagine that. Now, I'm a lion, remember? Pim stood in front of the tree and he waited. His mother was a really long time. He looked up. This was a funny tree with a long, thin trunk and the top spreading out like an umbrella. There was something moving up there. Was it a bird or a squirrel? Pim peered a bit harder. Mrs. Aardvark pounced. At once, Pim rolled over onto his back and began lashing at her with all 4 feet, his claws fully out. He even struck her with his tail. All right, Mrs. Aardvark gasped, trying to hold him off. I'm your mother, stop! Pim sat up, slowly. You said you were a lion, he grumbled. I wish you'd make up your mind. His mother looked at him. I'm glad I'm not a lion, she said, if that's how you treat them. Pim suddenly realised. I knew, he shouted. I knew how to fight. You knew all right, said his mother, feeling the tender spots all over her. It's a good job that I have a very thick hide. If I had thin skin like a cat, I would have been scratched and ripped and torn. Ugh. Pim was very pleased with himself. Isn't instinct wonderful? He cried. Shall we have another fight tomorrow? No, thank you, Mrs. Aardvark said. But it's only my first fighting lesson, said Pim. It's the first and the last, said his mother firmly. She felt very sore. Come on. If we're to find some termite nests before dawn, we must get going. And so, that night and the next one and every night for the next 5 months, Pim accompanied his mother on her hunting trips. He also grew bigger and stronger. He practiced digging a lot and became quite an expert. They moved house several times, and each time Pim helped his mother dig the new burrow. But one night, Mrs. Aardvark said, "I don't want you to help me this time." "Why not?" said Pim. "But I know what to do." "Yes, you do," said Mrs. Aardvark. "So you can make a burrow yourself, can't you?" Pim beamed at her. "Yes, yes, I will." So Pim dug his first burrow. He made a long tunnel and he dug out a round chamber at the end of it, big enough for him to turn around in. Proudly, he brought his mother down to inspect it. "Yes, it is good," she said, looking around her. "And I thought you said you were going to build rotten burrows that warthogs wouldn't want." "If any warthog tries to pinch this, he will have me to reckon with," Pim replied fiercely. Time passed. And in fact, it wasn't a warthog. It was a porcupine that Pim met coming down the tunnel the next evening. The porcupine backed hastily in front of Pim. I'm so sorry. I didn't know anybody lived here. Really, I didn't." His quills rattled nervously. "What made you think you could just walk in here when you felt like it?" Pim said fiercely. "You've got a cheek." "Oh, dear, oh," said the little porcupine. My mother told me that empty aardvark burrows make the best home, you see." "This aardvark burrow isn't empty," Pim said. No, I can see that," said the little porcupine, his quills rattling more than ever. I'll go at once." He turned and began to rattle away with a sharp, shuffling gait. "Wait," Pim said. "I forgive you. Please come back. What are you?" "A porcupine," the creature came back slowly. "What can you do?" Pim asked. "I'm just, interested." Do? The porcupine said. "Well, I can climb trees and I can swim." "Swim?" "Yeah, like move in water, to cross rivers and pools. Can you swim?" "Of course," said Pim. "What else can you do? Can you fight?" "Oh, of course," said the little porcupine. I make my quills stand up like this, and then I rush at my attacker like this." He charged at Pim, but stopped just short of him. Pim was very relieved. It would have been very painful indeed to have all of those sharp quills stuck into him at once. Yes, I see," said Pim. What do you eat?" Oh, grass and bark and things like that." What do you eat?" "Termites," Pim said. "I was just going to go and hunt for some, as a matter of fact." Well, I won't keep you then. Goodbye. Thank you for being so nice." The porcupine shuffled off. He happened to look around a second or two later, in time to see the friendly aardvark turning into another burrow. That was a funny place to look for termites. Oh well, it was nothing to do with him. The porcupine continued on his way. He wasn't to know that Pim wasn't weaned yet, and that he was actually heading to his mum to get some milk. Pim went out with his mother after his feed as usual. Mrs. Aardvark had a problem. Pim was 6 months old now, which is quite grown up for an aardvark. And it was time for him to begin to eat termites. But Pim wasn't interested in termites. She had taught him to tear open the nests. She had taught him to close his nostrils to keep the insects out whilst he was working. She had taught him how to use his tongue. But she couldn't teach him how to want to eat termites. And whilst he was full of milk, hunger wouldn't drive him to try them. There was only one thing to do. And when they got back to her burrow, Mrs. Aardvark did it. "Good night, Pim," she said as she stopped at the entrance to her burrow. "Good night already?" Pim said. What about my feed?" "Oh, you're too grown up for milk now. I'm not going to feed you anymore. Good night, dear." She turned her back and disappeared down her entrance tunnel. She felt terribly mean, but it was the only way. Pim went down his entrance tunnel, feeling very cross indeed. How could his mother refuse to feed him just like that? What a cruel thing to do. He felt very hard done by and muttered to himself as he dropped off to sleep. His mother hardly slept at all. She lay there worrying about him all day. When Pim woke up that evening, he was hungry, but he couldn't bring himself to go to his mother's burrow and be refused again. He lay there sulking and wondering what to do. Suddenly, he heard something that he'd never heard before. It sounded like thousands of tiny feet marching. It couldn't be. He listened very carefully. There was no doubt about it. Tiny footfalls. That's what he could hear. Pim dashed up the tunnel to see what it could be. His ears must be playing tricks on him. They weren't. Not far from the burrow, there were long, wavy lines of termites marching. Pim knew what they were by the smell, even before he was near enough even to see what they were. Termites on the march, thousands of them. And for the first time, Pim saw them as they really were. Food marching right past his front door. He wouldn't even have to go searching for it. Food that he didn't even have to dig for. It was just too easy. All he had to do was put out his long, sticky tongue. They were really very good. He shot his tongue out again and again and again. Soon he was gobbling termites as fast as he could go. Mrs. Aardvark had also heard the termites and had come up, but when she saw Pim, she stayed where she was. At last, she needn't worry about him any more. He liked termites. Pim did like termites, and there wasn't much left of that wavy line of them by the time he had eaten his fill. As he went back towards his burrow, he saw his mother watching him. "It's all right," he said. "I'm a grown-up aardvark now. I shan't need you any more." Suddenly, he galloped over to her. "If you hurry up, you can still catch some termites. I didn't eat them all." "Oh, good," said Mrs. Aardvark. "Thank you, my son." She galloped happily away to chase the tail of the termite column. Her job was done. Pim crawled into his burrow. He settled down into his sleeping corner, tired and happy and full. Oh, termites, they were delicious. Tomorrow night he would go out hunting and find some more, lots more. Pim looked around him at the firm earth walls of his home. Yes, this was a good burrow, and he had made it all himself. He sighed happily and buried his snout into his tail. There was no doubt about it now. Pim was an aardvark. And that is the end of this story. I hope you've enjoyed the story of the aardvark who wasn't sure and enjoyed listening to him grow up. Take care until next time. Bye-bye.